All right, good morning. Welcome to the town hall. Today we are going over seller servicing. So thank you so much for joining today. If I'm looking around my screen, it's because I'm trying to make sure that all of our screens are working properly. We've got it on YouTube, on Facebook, on Agent After Hours, and also on Workplace. So bear with us as I try to command center this from we're actually in 5 different locations today. So we have Melissa Maxwell, Nova Adi, and Andrea Johnson Backmez, all from Remax Victory and Affiliates. So thank you all for joining us this morning. And I know everybody's unmuting because I said, hey, if you guys could mute when you're not talking. So yeah, thank you guys for joining. Kent, you want to co-host this with me and kick it off with some of the questions that we sent them ahead of time on what they're doing to navigate what we haven't seen in a long time, which is actually staying in touch with sellers over the course of a longer listing period.
Yeah, this actually originated with a conversation Melissa and I had about 2 weeks ago. She goes, it's been a long time since we serviced sellers. What am I missing? What have I forgotten to do? What are the things that we need to be doing that we just haven't focused on the last couple of years? Obviously, with the seller's market we had, seller servicing amounted to about an hour and a half from the time you put the sign in the front yard until you presented the first offer. So we decided it was time to take a look again, get back, for a lot of the agents who joined the business in the last couple of years, say the last 4 years, 3 years anyway, they've never had to do seller servicing. It was something that was kind of a foreign topic. So we want to get back into that. And of course, all real estate usually comes back to getting back to the basics. But we have 3 really, really talented people here with you today. They've got a lot of insight and knowledge, and they know how to service their sellers, and they've done a great job through the years. We thought we'd ask them to share with you this morning. So I'll just open it up with let's do a little quick round robin there. I'll start with you, Melissa. If you just give us a little bit of your background and how long you've been in business and what's going on.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me today. I am interested in figuring this out because I feel like after doing this for 22 years now and selling real estate, that we should be able to figure out a few more things that we can do to try to help service the client than we actually did before 10 years ago when we were doing this. So I'm really interested to get some other ideas as to what everybody else is doing.
Thanks, Melissa. Nova, you want to give us a little background?
Hi, I'm Nova Adi. Thanks again for inviting me today. I started real estate in Arizona in 2005, so been doing this about 17 years. I was also licensed in Virginia and Ohio, so now serving the Dayton, Ohio area. And I started when at the last peak, 2005. So I've already been through the downswing and come back up again. So happy to talk about what we can do to increase our service to our sellers.
Thank you. Andrea?
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I am just like Nova. I've been licensed since 2005. I started when I feel like it was like one of those wonderful times. We saw the rates in the 7s, in the 6.5. So I know everything's going to be okay. But being licensed since 2005, I've been through the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows. I've also been with Remax the entire time. So, I think that definitely kind of helps, staying in front of people and people knowing where you are. So, and unlike Nova, I've only been with Ohio, so I'm super, just excited to stay with Ohio. I service the Cincinnati area. I'm also with Remax Victory Plus affiliates, and I was the #1 individual agent last year, for our offices. So that was pretty exciting. So, but things are changing this year. And so I think, I myself, we're going to try to, kind of get back into, just back to the basics and learning kind of, what we can do to, just adjust.
Well, I think that's great. And there was a great lead in there already, to talk about, sorry, Andrea, talk about the fact that when you started, interest rates were about where they are now.
Right.
And we had a boom market going on, if I recall. And then a couple years later.
Yeah, it really was. And that's why I think it's all going to be fine. I think it's just the, overall, I think, shock of where we were to where we are now. And, I think it's just going to take a little bit to, just give everyone an opportunity to, readjust their expectations.
Yeah. Maybe go just throw this question out to any of us and let all of you jump in. But what do you think that we need to be focused on today with seller serving? How about, I guess, sellers' expectations, I guess, is a big part of that. Today, it's totally different than it was just even 6 months ago. I'm just wondering how you're approaching that with your sellers, when you're having those conversations, and how realistic are they? Just, what are you finding in the field when you go talk to a seller? Nova, you want to take a shot?
It's very hard because sellers, of course, are expecting the market to be like it was in the spring. And even though they know things are changing, they're still hoping that their house is going to get them the price that they want. And it's very important to set those expectations, especially in the front, proper pricing, just because you don't want to start high and chasing the market down if it continues to decrease. I've just been trying to make sure that the sellers understand. I still give them the choice. I give them a range, and hoping, we can come to a good agreement at where to start. And then, of course, just making sure that they know that they need to do things now for their house to prepare it to be listed. Gone are the days where you just put the sign in the yard. But even back in the spring, I still had sellers do things to help prep the house, because you want them to get the best price and the best terms.
So real quick, Nova, to kind of elaborate on that, the kind of conversations that you're having with sellers, setting those expectations, what do those conversations look like? Does it start at the listing appointment? Does it start when you sign documents? How does that kind of the flow of that work?
I always start at the listing appointment. For me, I don't want to take the listing if they're going to be unrealistic. There's no reason to, tell them that the house is going to sell higher than it is, setting the wrong expectation, and then you end up with upset clients. So if they're not willing to listen to my advice in the very beginning, and I've had people not choose me because I didn't tell them the things they wanted to hear. I always tell them what they need to hear. And then if they like my style and appreciate my honesty, then we work together. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Everything you just said is, I think what, maybe if we weren't from the beginning, even this past year and a half, it needs to be now that we're just upfront and honest regarding, what it could be. And I, like Nova, I just lost eight potential listings from an investor, and they're still sitting. I'm watching them, but I think we're in the market to get things our job is to get them sold in the least amount of time at the highest, possible price. So I think just giving people the expectation, up front, and I'm with you. I'm the good, better, best. Like, here's a range. I'm going to listen to them, of course, but in actuality, we're all kind of just, we're going to have to test some things. And I think, the sellers are, if we're upfront and just realistic, most of them are going to listen because you're the professional. So I think we just need to, kind of keep that in the forefront. And I think you mentioned something about like price expectations. So kind of jump into there for just a second, but I used to be, if I listed on a Thursday, if we didn't have an offer by Sunday, we're going to look at some feedback and look into maybe, what happened, whether it be, condition or price. And, now I've kind of moved that like, hey, if it's not, if we don't have an offer in 7 days, we're going to reconvene. So I think that's important just to give them like kind of a timeline, as well. And if we don't hit this mark, then we'll do X, Y, and Z. So.
No, I think that's really good. I have run into the same issue where I'm bringing the comparable sales to the listing appointments and going over everything. The tricky part is that right now the comparable sales are still the old market pricing. So we're still adjusting, and I'm letting them know that we have to be able to navigate through this and testing the market to see the changes that are happening right now. So it is very interesting, but we are working with them and letting them know if we don't have an offer or we have 10 showings and we're getting the feedback and nothing's happening, then we need to go ahead and adjust in the market. Even though I'm saying these things up front at the listing appointment and letting them know that, I'm still getting texts and calls daily, a few times a day, like what's happening, what's going on, because I think they're still stuck in that mindset that things need to be moving faster and there need to have more showings than they have been just because of what's happened in the market within the last couple of years. So it is very difficult, and I'm trying to stay on top of that, but I just feel like I'm doing some of the old school things that we did before in regards to servicing the sellers. In regards to that, I mean, like just giving them the comps, obviously, showing them what else is on the market, going over the feedback kind of stuff. But you would think after all this time that there would be something else that we could be doing to try to share with them so that they could really see in the local market what's happening and how they can really take it in other than just hearing it from me.
I think showing them the price reductions, it has done it for me. I mean, that is something black and white that I've been able to print. Like, this has been on the market for 14 days. They've done 2 price reductions. So, pricing it out of the gate initially is super important. So that's helped me. And then showing, just an overall, like what the days on the market were, back in February as compared to, today.
Yeah. It's important to show them the active listings and also, what's pending. That will show what's going on right now. Houses that used to sell 25,000 more, they can see is pending at a lower price, or the ones that have sold after June when the interest rates increased. So kind of showing them a current market compared to the spring market.
How often are you communicating with the sellers, or is there an expected time frame? Like, in the old days, you say you'll hear from me every Monday, and when that occurs, what is it exactly that we're going over with them? Obviously, these price changes are great. I love that idea, Andrea. In the showings, but what kind of feedback are we giving them? What kind of reports are they looking for? What can we use to support? After a little while, they're just looking at you going, well, you keep telling me this, but obviously we have to get them to buy in, and get them to buy in usually comes from giving them information. So what kind of information is valuable to the seller, and how often do you try to report to them?
I think the honest feedback. I know a lot of people, I think restrict maybe the feedback going to their sellers. I'm not sure why. It was written by somebody else, not myself. So that's usually a little bit easier for them to swallow. And of course, if it's not great feedback, you know, I mean, it is what it is, but you know, it's not coming directly from you. So I think just, you know, trying to, you know, give them all the information, you know, that is given to you, whether it's good or bad.
We actually have it in the MLS for Kentucky, at least, where there's a report that we can send out automatically to them that does give them the price adjustments and what's new on the market, and even different counties of houses that are similar, so that they can really see what's happening with the overall picture, which is what I'm sending to them automatically on a weekly basis. And then, of course, CCing myself so that we can take a look at everything and reevaluate at that point. But
I think it's also, oh, sorry.
it's
I
been
think
good.
it's also important to show them how the activity on their listing. You can actually look up a hit counter on the Dayton board that shows how many emails were sent, portals, invites. You can also look on the different websites as far as in statistics for how many hits there are, how many saves to favorites. So showing them their internet activity, everything, everywhere they are, I usually try to send them a link. This is what your house looks like on this site and that site. And they just need to know all the things that you're doing to market it, and even where the listing is going to when you put it on Remax or the DABR.
No, and I think it's important to point out that we are in multiple different markets. We've got Kentucky, Dayton, and Cincinnati. So it's interesting to hear all the different perspectives. Nova, I want to rewind just for a second because you mentioned something that I thought was really important. And when you said you started at the listing presentation with setting the expectations, and Mark Berger, who's a great friend of mine and works here in the office, said it perfectly, and I use it all the time. It's I'd rather turn you down than let you down.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes so much sense, especially in a market like this, because sometimes it's best to be the second or third listing agent as opposed to the first, where they have unrealistic expectations. They want the price at a certain, you know, dollar amount, and they want it sold within 2 weeks, right? Because that's what everybody else has been doing for the last X amount of years. But as the market has shifted, we have seen this. Is there a typical price point or price percentage that you think that the market has already had that retraction that you guys are seeing?
I I don't know. I'm thinking maybe around 3%. You know, and it's very subtle. The houses that are still perfect, you know, great location, have great amenities, well taken care of, upgraded, those are still selling for top dollar. But the ones that need some help or, you know, need some things done to it, those are tending to maybe just get list price and asking for some closing costs to help with repairs. So I think it depends on the house. The other thing I wanted to mention about the listing presentation is that you have to make sure that you already have that trust and rapport built up, and you have to come in with your numbers and your evidence, you know, about the market, about what pricing is, to be able to convince them, you know, what strategy to take. So I think that's also important to note, that you have to have their trust in order to have those difficult conversations with them. I like to try to see, you know, what are the seller's responses, what their thoughts are. And then I kind of take it from there, how much information they can take at that time. Because of course, you know, you're trying to be helpful. So hopefully they see that when you're talking with them during the listing appointment. So.
Yeah, I think it's super important. I always get to know my client. I mean, sellers, you know, I think even more so than buyers. Buyers are going to tell you exactly what they want, right? Sellers are going to let you kind of talk. But I usually let them talk. I try to get a feel for, are they an analytics person? Do they want this graph of, that they're, is going to, confuse them? Do they want me to call them daily to just tell them nothing's going on? Or do they just want me to call them when, I have an offer? So I think kind of just getting to know your client, reading them, is a good way just to kind of know how to approach, the entire listing in general.
So as the market has shifted, is there anything that you guys are doing differently that you maybe weren't doing other than reports on a weekly basis? Is there anything that you're doing differently to service the listing? Are you going above and beyond with, photos and 3D tours and videos and drone and stuff, or were you doing that already?
Yeah, that's something that I had implemented really a few years ago, and we've continued to do it just to have the really good pictures and great marketing to be able to showcase the property regardless of how quickly it moved. So I think it's super important to continue to do that just to be able to have the activity that you need.
Yeah, same here. I always kind of went above and beyond with, photos, drone, video tours. I would do like happy hour open houses, which seemed to be, I think, more fun for myself than, the house was already sold usually. I really focus on, and again, maybe some do, but I'm really into, design and, staging. So I do have, a garage filled with light staging stuff. Now this is not, furniture, but, initial consultation is really to go through and talk about exactly what they can do, whether it be, just the light updates, some fresh paint, moving furniture, cleaning the carpet, replacing maybe, something is broken, light bulbs, and, kind of going through all of those different, things that they should do. And then I will come in and stage the property right before photos. So I think, I'm going to continue just to be 100% myself, no matter what market it is. But I do think, offering some little things, maybe that someone else isn't, if you're going up against somebody, is going to, kind of stand out.
Real quick, Andrea, you've had some of the most successful, and you talked about it there for a minute with the open house happy hours. You've had some of the most successful ones that I've seen with the most amount of people that I've seen. So and it was on it wasn't even on a Sunday. It was like a random weeknight, right?
Uh-huh.
So how did you orchestrate that? Tell me about the turnout. And
so I've done a few, and they've all been really fun. My favorite is, I got a lender who helped me sponsor, and the property just happened to have a pool. So we had this amazing margarita, Mexican theme. We had things for the kids. It was just really fun. We had Lay's. We kind of walked around to the neighbors, invited them to, come hang out with us. That property did actually sell from the open house. But, normally it's really not. I do the open houses, so a nosy neighbor will come in and I can meet them and they can meet me. And, I know we have gotten away from open houses just because things are selling. But I continually will always do an open house the first day it's listed or the second day, just because that's when you're going to get the most interest. So I've always done that. But I think a lot of people are open houses, boo-hoo. But if you market it correctly, you sponsor the post, which I've had some issues with, regarding how Facebook allows you to do that. But if you print the flyer, walk to the nearest neighbors, you don't have to spend money on postcard cards, but advertise it to them, and it will bring them in, because everyone's curious about their neighbors' houses. So it's not necessarily to get it sold. But this is a good way to, meet the neighbors and make a name for yourself in that community.
We had a couple people come in on the chat. One of them said that Lee Brown kind of said the same things that you three are talking about. Is that you asked him at the beginning if he could be on.
Kate, you're freezing up there just a little bit.
You hear it now? Okay. So one of the lines that we've used in the training for years is I can tell you what you want to hear, or I can tell you what you need to know. Which do you prefer? And it really stops everybody for a second and go, what? But I can tell them if I've said this before. If you go to the doctor and you got cancer, and you say, well, I'd like to treat it with M&M, and he can tell you what you want to hear, and tell you can try the M&Ms, or he can tell you what you need to know, that you're going to have the chemo. I think a good agent does that, and creates the realistic expectations up front with the seller, so that they know that you're not afraid to have that tough conversation with them. But a couple of things that I'm seeing here is some real consistency there. Is all three of you continue to do the same things in the seller's market that we've done before in buyer's markets, or in this changing market. Is that if you never quit doing the basics, and that's really, really good. It's super that people are doing that. I had one of the agents tell us recently she did that because I'm also marketing myself every time I market a listing, and I want people to know what kind of services and what kind of things that I do, and that's part of my marketing as well as my seller marketing. So just want to kind of reach back on that a little bit and see if there's some things that you're doing that you think are uniquely great. I love that open house first or second day, going the old-fashioned door-to-door there and inviting a couple of neighbors to come through so that you get the nosy neighbors to help you. Any comments on things like that?
I also wanted to mention that because I live in the Dayton area and the base is right here, we have a lot of relocation. So I always try to make my listings so that they could be purchased online. And what I mean by that is, making sure, like Andrea, I also do a lot of staging. And then with the Matterport tours, the drone, the professional pictures, which Alex does a great job for me. I have people who have bought sight unseen just from the videos or their agent going through. And then I just make sure that the house looks as good in person as it does in the pictures, so that they feel comfortable. The other thing I think is important is listing all the specific details about the house. It makes the narrative very long, but some people prefer to read things versus visual. So, and in pictures, you can't always get all the details. And the more the person sees that the house has, the more they feel comfortable about making an offer. So, and that they can see all the details too.
I think that it has been amazing to be able to canvas the neighborhoods with these open houses. I think that's super important. And that's something that my buyer's agents are doing as well with just basic flyers. And we've had a lot of activity from the neighbors and other people just coming through the open houses stuff, which seems to be more than the showings at this point, which is interesting.
Yes, I love that idea. I think Andrea said she goes door to door and you're doing the flyers. Are any of you doing just listed, just sold postcards when you're selling or listing houses?
So yes, just sold, just listed. Unfortunately, unless it was like coming soon, which I got very tired of, because I did feel that coming soon actually eliminated the amount of people coming through maybe on day one, which I think was like not the purpose of that, because it wasn't going to like necessarily like the public sites. So I kind of did away with coming soon, but yeah, I mean, just sold, absolutely 100% highly recommend it. It goes to like the nearest 100 people. I think my assistant, who is now my licensed agent partner. She sends them. I think it's like $84, which really is not that bad. So, and it's kind of like you just put in the picture and it's got your information, I think, which is, great. And if you wanted to do the flyers around, even if it's just listed, I mean, and again, like for me, I don't know, for me, it was like 10. If you just like walked and did it and saved yourself the money, maybe you don't have the money to do it, like, and you could do just sold and just listed, go 10, and then, like 20 across the street, just with the nearest neighbors. That's 40, neighbors potentially, and just put the flyer for, just listed or just sold. And I think that's a great way. And you might run into some neighbors. And then you'd be able to talk to them directly. Maybe they have a friend or a family member who wants to, live on the street. I've been seeing that a lot lately. People are not able to get those multi-generational homes because either they're gone or they don't exist. So they want to live on the same street. So, again, back to, the basics, and some of the people who just got licensed or 2018, I think this is like, some good stuff to, just kind of, and I even have to do the same. I've got to go back to the basics.
Real estate 101.
Right.
Well, and I don't know if you guys remember the days of Crisscross. Do you guys remember the Crisscross directories?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. With the addresses. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got an agent here in the office, Brian. He does a lot of circle prospecting, and he will call. He's not going door to door, but he will call the entire neighborhood anytime he has a listing and just say, hey, we just listed the house at 123 Main Street, and now would be a great time for you to pick your neighbor if you know of anyone looking. And he starts.
I'm curious though, what is his reactions with that? Because I don't answer like I actually do answer every phone call, I promise. But so sometimes phone calls are just overwhelming us as agents. We get a ton of spam calls. So
Sure.
I'm always, so I'm curious, like what he's getting, like what the feedback is. Like, did people like being called?
I would say the typical reaction is no.
Right.
But I would say that probably us as realtors are a little hypersensitive to it because we are on the phone all day and we get calls from
Right.
every vendor on the planet, and health insurance company, and you name it. So, but he knows his metrics very well. That is the primary source of his business. And I think he did close to 30 million last year, if not more. So yeah, he crushes it with it, but I think he has to make something like 63 phone calls to get X amount of appointments. So, and X amount of appointments end up in X amount of transactions. So I think he's consistently around that 125 transaction mark.
Yeah, I feel like everyone just needs to find their niche. Now, I don't particularly like being on the phone, but that works for him. It's like people who, cold call or do like for sale by owners. I mean, it's what's going to work for them. So, me, I, really focus on, my past clients, spoiling them, doing fun things on social media. And that works for me because I don't mind being in front of the camera. So I think everyone just needs to kind of look to see, what they enjoy and then utilize it towards, marketing yourself, being able to, I guess, get business, drum up business, whatever, kind of works for you. I think we're all very different in that.
Melissa, could you weigh in on that a little bit? Because I know you have your crew making phone calls into neighborhoods. And I asked one time to Alex, who works on Melissa's team, where are you getting these numbers? And they are still using good old fashioned crisscross kind of numbers and calling neighborhoods with some really good success.
Yeah, I'm part of a masterminds group for nationwide agents. And there was actually something that one of the REMAX agents mentioned, which was megaphone. So there is a way to circle prospect with the numbers through megaphone for the address, which was really cool. Now, a lot of people don't have a landline or like you said, don't necessarily answer, but we leave a message and let them know about it. And I think it's been great. We've had a good turnout and a lot of good responses from the sellers, even just calling back to say, thanks for letting us know I may be interested in selling down the road kind of thing, and try to get an idea of price point and that kind of stuff with where they are. So that's been really good for us.
The consistent theme I'm hearing from these three successful people is back to basics. This is not a glamour business, is it? It's hard work.
It's a lot of hard work. The one thing that I would be interested in, though, is beyond just giving the statistics and the pricing and the hits that we're getting and showing activity, is to try to get some kind of link that we could share for the local market. Because I think so often with these, newsletters and stuff that I get, it's more generalized for the entire United States. And sometimes that's just not as effective. So do you guys have any good sites or links that you're sharing with your clients just to discuss the market or sphere? I think that would be really helpful.
I'll jump in real quick and say that there are, and I will have to dig through my list software that we use. There's one that we use that sends out really cool updates for all past sellers or all past buyers that we use for our database or we have used in the past. That gives them updates on what their house is worth on a monthly basis, similar to what Top Producer used to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it was cool because especially in like the Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky markets, it will show the possibility of A, what their rate is, B, what they could possibly Airbnb the property for.
Oh, cool.
So I really liked that. So it said, hey, maybe you could use this house to get some additional equity. And if you're looking to maybe upgrade or even downsize, is this the right house for that? And it was a monthly item, and they could actually put in, hey, we made some upgrades. So now it's a great time for you to reach out to them and say, because they'll move that slider and tell you, hey, we think it's worth $15,000 more because we did a new kitchen. And so now it's a great opportunity for you to reach out and say, hey, know you made some upgrades. Just can you send me some before and after pictures? And you can start that dialogue because you're not going to immediately say, oh, you updated your kitchen. Now's a great time to sell.
Right. No, I love that, though. I knew that there had to be some technology to be able to help us a little bit more with at least trying to educate everyone so that they're just not hearing it from us,
Absolutely.
We have somebody in the chat box also to remind us that the entire market is not the same. This is what you're actually hitting there. Somebody on the chat said, I'm closing I have a listing at 525, closing at 550. So some are still selling above list price. So you want to talk about some of the inventory and some of the little pockets that you're seeing like that as well?
As far as Cincinnati, I do know, and I agree with someone just said, it depends on the condition because there's homes that I have just walked into and they need, either a lot of renovation or maybe they're just not kept up. So I think the buyers are able to be a little bit more picky in regards to or not overlooking some stuff. So that's why it's super important, just with, getting your seller to, listen to you regarding, staging, getting the house ready to go. And my biggest suggestion to tell your sellers is to get them to have a professional company to come in and clean their house. We're talking windows, baseboards, just closets. All of this, because it really, truly helps tremendously. And I would tell you, my sellers who listen to me and do it, their house sells significantly, quicker because, the buyer's, perception when they walk in is that, oh my gosh, their house has always looked like this. That means they must maintain their house. They must maintain the mechanics that, and it's, in good condition. So I think that's the visual there. So.
Yeah, I love it. And I did find that software. I will show it on the screen here real quick if I can. Probably not. It's called HomeBot. So homebot.ai.
So is it safe to say that staging and warranties have made a reappearance in the market?
Well, I would say I've always done like Andrea said. I always have them fix any minor items. I do staging like Andrea does. I always suggest the professional carpet cleaning, fresh coat of paint in areas that need it, and then the professional cleaning. I definitely agree with that. I think there's a lot to be said for a house where they walk in and they're like, wow, everything is so clean. They must take care of the house. So I agree with Andrea on that one. So it's just very important as far as in the market, every city, even the ones where, let's say the school district isn't as good, there's always a buyer for every city. So it's just important to make sure that the house shows in the best light because, you know, I'm seeing a recurring theme where everybody wants a house that they can just move into, minimal updates needed, minimal work needed, and they're willing to pay top dollar for that. So maybe not necessarily where the house is located, but just making sure that the house is as good as it can be for what it is and in that area. And then you'll always be able to find a buyer who's willing to pay for it.
Every home is a move up for somebody.
Yes, exactly. Well, and not only all of those things that you mentioned, I think it's super important to have the house ready to go before you have it listed. There's no question about that. And that's always part of me and my initial listing appointment. But I think that what we've gotten back to more than anything is going into more descriptive ideas of what kind of financing that they can do and what's available for that particular property. I think that we're getting back to advertising that and making sure that people are aware that because of the change in the interest rates and what they need for a down payment, that they know what's available.
That was a lead into my next topic. I was going to ask if we're starting to discuss financing again. Keep in mind that in the old days we did a lot of this, but FHA and VA loans can be assumable. There's a release liability issue to get involved with. Talk to your lenders about that, but they may have an old interest rate that's at 3% as they're trying to sell the house, and it may be very, very attractive to a buyer to just go get a second mortgage or home equity line for the additional financing and lock in on somebody's 3% interest rate. Being the old guy here, I can tell you back in the early 80s when we were doing a lot of new construction, we had interest rates up to 19%. It was really, really crazy to try to find financing. We had lots of different things we did with sellers paying discount points. So think of that in terms of your current sellers, it may be more advantageous to not lower the price, but offer better terms than your competitors do. So 3 points, for instance, instead of reducing 3%, 3 points could get you a 2-1 buy down, meaning if the rates today are at 6%, you can start off the first year at 4, the second year at 5, and not settle into 6 until the third year. So talk to your favorite lenders and start talking, get a little creative with the financing. Lots of things you can do there. The 3% would also buy down the interest rate, 0.5%. Confirm that with your lenders as well, but you might be able to get somebody qualified at 5.5 instead of 6. So I think we do, the professionals are going to start pulling out all these old tricks again to try to make ours look just a little different than the other ones. Are you seeing any financing being thrown at you from other sellers or out there at the moment? Other listings?
I'm seeing ARMs. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people, just kind of taking advantage, knowing that this may not be, kind of it's short-term, rise is what we're kind of getting. At least I'm getting from, the lenders is that this is, not the long term. And, and I think too, and if we're talking, rates is that we need to also remind our buyers that, rents in Cincinnati alone is like the top, we're the top city for rental increases across the nation, over Seattle, over Nashville. The last time I looked at it was 42%. So just keep in mind, that's a good statistic to kind of throw at your buyers when they're like, oh, rates are this. Well, you're just going to have to kind of come down, maybe 50,000 on, what you could afford. But, ultimately, the goal, is to pay your own mortgage instead of somebody else's because, after that year, they can raise your rent again. And we're not going anywhere. Cincinnati and the surrounding area is very desirable. So I think if we just kind of, Don't focus on that and go after millennials. They don't really know what the rates were. They haven't been really paying attention. So that's, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, they're just like, oh, I'm approved to get a house. That's great. Even if it's like 275 now, it's fine. So I think just like spinning it, I've been hearing so much about rates, and I've watched a few panels, and some of the lenders are just like doom and gloom, and I'm sticking with the ones that are super positive. But I think it's like if we maintain the positive and we don't try to focus on what it was, and just the fact of home ownership, and how exciting it is, and you can refinance when the rates go down a little bit. That's the beauty. You're not stuck.
Andrea, I think you nailed it. We had this conversation in our team meeting, and I had it on agent or mastermind last week. The pool of buyers that are buying that you're going to see come out of the woodwork in the next 3 to 6 months don't know the difference between what they're pre-approved from, because they weren't pre-approved at 3%. So they only know what the rates are today. And that's historically been the case. Yeah, we have a lot of disappointed buyers that didn't buy when we had the Black Friday of real estate rates, right? So we had that. We have some disappointed buyers that couldn't get a house because they wrote 10 offers and they were pre-approved originally at 3 and didn't find the house of their dreams. But we have this cycle of every 3 to 5 years sellers that are going to sell, because that's what it is now. It used to be 5 to 7.
5 to 7, I know.
And now it's gone down a little bit. But you've got all these people 5 years ago that now have 30% equity in their home.
Gosh.
That is just still insane. I mean, they had 30% appreciation. And I know I've used Ivy Zellman as an example before. She's the best analyst I've seen on real estate. And she predicts that we'll have an 8.8% reduction in the national sales price, or the sales price nationally, over the next 2 years. Even with that said, you went from like a 40 or 42% appreciation if you bought within the last 3 years to 30%, which is still insane. So these people have equity. They're going to have a bigger chunk of down payment to put on to whatever they're buying next. And then we still have, like you said, the millennials that are going to be buying and don't know any different.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, I mean, this is like and maybe you've been in the business since like 2016, and you have not contacted those people yet. I mean, now is the time. Like, even though the rates are up, but just check on them, see how they're doing. They have so much equity that they could probably put down like 40%. I mean, on the next home. They made some, great,
or buy down the rate.
or buy down the rate. Yeah. I mean, so I think there's a lot that we can, do and make this like, a positive thing, instead of, just talking about how terrible the rates are.
I think it's also important to remind people that since we're shifting into this new market, that now buyers don't have to sell their soul to get a house. There's not as much competition. You're not going to have to pay way over list price and then do an appraisal gap to cover that. That now you might even be able to get repairs and maybe some closing cost assistance if the house has been sitting a little while. So it's actually a really great time to buy.
The statistical thing too is, there was an article the other day in the Cincinnati Enquirer, or Cincinnati.com, I guess you call it now. But anyway, it was very misleading. It talked about the prices dropping in the Cincinnati market. It was misleading. What it said was basically that the median prices dropped. It said nothing about any particular house that dropped in value. What the writer didn't understand was the median prices dropped, meaning that the average price that people were paying, the price point that people were buying dropped. Of course it did, because the interest rates went up. It had nothing to do with the value of an individual home dropping that percent. But they talked and made a big deal out of the median sale price that dropped 20% in Cincinnati. And it was a woe is me, the sky has fallen. So it's important that we make sure we get the right message out to all of our people as well. Kind of leads into my next topic, and just see, what are you doing on social media these days to try to help your sellers and promote your properties and to get the messages out? So I'll just open that up. And Tyler, you're in this one as well, Matt.
Again, I think it goes back to nothing has changed with how we market properties. We've always made sure that it's apparent in not only our page stream, and we do boosted promotions for that. Not by clicking the boost button. I've done plenty of videos on not using just the boost button because that only shows your listing to the social butterflies, which are most likely to like or comment, not necessarily the people that are most likely to purchase. But also your personal stream. I think it's a friendly reminder because we've all had the cousin or uncle or whoever that calls the agent on the sign, or they went through an open house and wrote an offer without you. It reminds people that you're in real estate. So, but nothing has changed as far as our marketing. Same with Nova and Andrea and Melissa. We're still doing 3D tours. We're still doing drone. We're still doing full walkthrough videos because at the end of the day, that is our. I think somebody said. I think Melissa said she had somebody without a resume. That is your online resume. So showcasing what you're doing online is your online resume for everyone to see how you're showcasing properties.
Absolutely. Stay consistent. Just be, keep doing the same thing. And, then the sellers, when they're referring you, it's just, across the board, you're going to, I think, it's just going to be a better, situation. And, if you just stay consistent, that's why, I've always done the same thing, whether it's been, $100,000 property or it's been $1 million property. Everyone gets the same service. I know there's a lot of brokerages out there that offer, discounts for this and that. I think we're going to start to see some changes, just like we did in the last shift, where the discount brokerages, you weren't getting as much, or, you stuck the sign in the yard. So, I think if you're doing what you should be doing and following some of, any of this advice, you're going to, stick around through, what, I don't know. I call this a correction. I wouldn't even say it's a down. It's a little bit of a correction, I think for all of us. So, that's nice.
Real estate's a marathon, and we went through a really long sprint there, so we're just taking a breather, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
agents have really been good about promoting the pros and cons of buying versus renting with that kind of thing through social media as well. That's helped them a lot, just to be able to get out to their sphere so that they see that it is really better still, regardless of what the rates are, to be able to buy versus renting.
I love some of the memes, mortgage rate costs 7%, renting costs 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It did open up another market for you, as I believe, as well. Is not many people were working for sale by owners the last couple of years, but it looks like that's another source of business, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So real quick, because I know we're running short on time, and I know we covered the consistency in communication, but how are you having the hard conversations with your sellers? I know nobody likes to make the call to say, hey, we've had X amount of showings and no offers, or we've been on the market for 2 to 3 weeks and have no offers. How are you having those conversations with your sellers to have those price reductions?
I'm actually telling them up front as part of the listing appointment that that's the strategy that we're going to follow, just to be able to, if they want to start higher, let's test the market, but there is a strategy in place to be able to make those adjustments and to monitor everything so that we can correct ourselves if we need to be able to get it sold.
I love it.
I love it too. Yep. Listen to them, and, give them, ultimately it is their choice. You have the opportunity to walk away and not list it. But I'm all for, if I think it's in a range, now I think if it's over crazy, then, I'm going to, part ways, and, let somebody else do it because, ultimately it is, our time and it's our money. And, I think we need to be, upfront, in the beginning. So, yeah.
I think it's
No, go ahead, Nova.
I think it's helpful to ask them what they want for the house. It's interesting when they tell you what number they're trying to get. And, as long as it's within the range, I'm okay with that. But then I say, if you want this price, these are the things you need to do to prepare the house for sale. And so if they do those things, then we are able to list that high. Luckily, I haven't needed any price reductions yet this year.
Mhm.
And I think it's because, I have them set a competitive price in the very beginning and then making sure that the house reflects that price. So I think it's important to start with that, start there. So hopefully you don't have to do any price reductions.
Yeah. We all know price reductions are not great because the buyer looks at that, or the length of time affects it too. So I think letting them know that, a price reduction could, affect, ultimately what they get. So if they price it competitively out of the gate, given the, condition, then they're going to probably get the price they ultimately wanted.
So that leads me kind of to my final question, because we haven't seen it a whole lot. Kent touched on FSBO. We talked about price reductions, but how about expired listings? How are you having the conversations before? Because the reason, obviously, we chose you three is you've seen the ups and downs of the market, and a lot of agents haven't. So we wanted people that have seen the conversations or had the conversations on renewing a listing. So knock on wood that we don't have those, but I remember when average days on market was over 90 days and not 42.
Well, I think it just depends too. Like my listing contracts, like the past year and a half, have been 90 days. Again, I'm very open, honest up front. And if I don't do my job or, something happens, I don't want them to have, I want them to be able to sell their house, essentially. I think now we are going to have to take, a better look about, extending that. I never did year contracts. I always did 6 months, back in in the downturn. So I think kind of just knowing, that, and then, giving your sellers even in the initial, meeting is to, hey, if we did get to this, point, we're going to go through, what we've done. And as long as I've done what I said I would do, in regards to marketing, following through, open houses, whatever that might be, then I would, like for you to consider, extending. And obviously if the rapport and the communication is good, then they should. But it's never a fun conversation. But if you have the information that you've done initially, what you said you would, then you should be able to get it.
I think if you're communicating with them throughout the whole process and showing the things that you're trying to do, the feedback that you're getting, and just so they feel that you're actively marketing the house and doing all the right things, then they should feel comfortable renewing with you. So communication is key, and just making sure that you're keeping up with everything and talking to them, emails, texts, phone calls. Phone calls are very important. You have to have that voice to voice, just so that they can hear the sincerity and how hard you're trying. And then, of course, being uplifting, telling them the positive things and, what can we do to improve? I think the feedback is so very important to get from the other agents. I hate our feedback surveys that just say, priced right, shows well, and not interested. But why?
Yeah.
So,
and you can change that too.
Yes, I know. I just have to do it.
Right.
We haven't been needing to do it the last year. But I like to call the agents and or text them and try to get more specific, because sometimes, they just don't want to take the time. Because even if you make those surveys detailed, you still don't find enough information. And then to be able to share that with the seller to get the price reduction, or, to improve the things that that buyers want fixed. So.
Absolutely. Communication is key.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Nova, with the phone calls are so important, because We are in such an age of automation with emails and texts and reports and all these things. Sometimes they just want to hear from you and have that reassurance of, hey, it's okay that it's been on the market for 3 weeks. Let's revisit the comps that I've sent you and have these conversations. But this is still a person-to-person business, and that's why they hired you in the first place. So I think that's important to keep in mind for sure.
Absolutely. Staying in front of them.
Call them before they call you.
Yes.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yep. Pick up the phone and call them, because eventually they will call you, and they're not going to be real happy when they do.
Right.
So,
Well, I don't know about everybody out there, but I have a notebook full of notes from these three geniuses here this morning. And I guess to summarize it, this is hard work, back to basics, roll up your sleeves and just stay at it. But just some great ideas, ladies. I really appreciate it. Tyler?
no, I agree. I've got a handful of things that I need to revisit personally, just from a contact standpoint on our team listings. And yeah, I thank you all three for joining us today. And sorry I didn't have your names up here earlier, but I did get them up here at the end. So our agents, feel free to reach out, and thank you again for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will see you guys on the next one. And if you guys have questions or comments, drop them in and we'll try to check them. And I think Nova and Andrea and Melissa all can check those as well, not only on Workplace, but on Agent After Hours on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. So thank you again.